Hi everybody and welcome to today's video. We're going to be looking at the horse's skeleton and doing a great revision session on the bones that we have at a basic level. And this is useful for things like the BHS Stage 2, any kind of FE or higher education courses that you might be on where you might need to know a bit about the horse's basic anatomy. And links nicely into some of the other videos which go a little bit more in depth on subjects such as the horse's teeth and also the function of the bones. So we know the skeleton there is primarily as a frame to allow movement, but also to protect the organs which are vital in the horse's body. So we're going to start at the head then, and looking at the horse's teeth to begin with in a basic level. The horse has 36 to 40 teeth on average and can go up to 42, including the wolf teeth. Geldings and stallions tend to have more due to the horse's tushes, which you'll be able to find here in the horse's mouth. Some mares do have them, but not all mares. And we'll talk a bit about that more in depth in the teeth video on the channel. So the incisors at the front here, there are 6 lower and 6 upper incisors. Then you move back to the premolars, and again there are 6 upper and 6 lower premolars. And then the molars at the back of the jaw, again 6 upper and 6 lower. And then, as I say, if we check out the teeth revision video, you'll learn a little bit more about the different types of teeth and the differences between mares, geldings, etc. So moving up then, we have the horse's cranium, which is obviously what we would term the skull. And that is obviously protecting the brain and the slightly less robust, more fragile bones in the nasal passageway, known as the turbinate bones, which are used for filtering air as it comes in and remind you a little bit of like quavers, like that kind of curly shape, and with filtering ability to get any particles out of the air that the horse breathes in. Then the upper jaw is called the maxilla, which I'm pointing to now. The upper jaw is fixed and obviously is there with the teeth. You have the mandible, which is the horse's main, what we would consider the jawbone, and obviously that does move on a hinge, the joint being up here, the mandible. Then we have the orbit here. And then finally, for your stage 2 level, is the occipital bone, which is here, which we would also know as the horse's poll. And if you feel for that, you're feeling between the horse's ears, and it will feel somewhat like an egg shape on top of the horse's head. So that's the skull. Incisors, premolars, molars, maxilla, mandible, cranium, orbit, occipital. We then move down the bones of the horse's neck, and there are 7 cervical vertebrae, which you can see my mouse arrow is pointing to now. Now, often people think when the neck, look at the horse's neck, that it's just a straight line down, but it's not. It's slightly curved. And obviously we know it has quite a good range of movement, both left and right and up and down. The first 2 bones of the horse's neck are slightly differently named. The first one at the top here being the atlas, and the second one here being the axis. So 7 cervical vertebrae, atlas and axis. We then carry on down the spine, and the bones of the withers here and the bones that we sit on with the saddle are known as the thoracic vertebrae. And there are 18 thoracic vertebrae. And obviously they become a little bit less mobile in terms of the motion that they allow. Joined to that, we have the ribs, which are obviously protruding down here. And there are 18 ribs. 10 ribs we call true ribs, as they are attached to the sternum, which I'm pointing to now, which is on the front there of the horse's chest. The latter 8 ribs are false ribs and are connected by cartilage rather than bone. So 18 thoracic vertebrae, 18 ribs. We then have, behind the saddle, the lumbar vertebrae. And these are positioned over the kidneys. So you may think, you might hear somebody say the horse is tight behind the saddle. That's generally sort of the lumbar area. And there are 6 lumbar vertebrae. We then have the sacral vertebrae around the top of the pelvis. And there are 5 sacral vertebrae, much more fused than the likes of the neck, for example, much more restricted in terms of movement and fused there. And the last part of the spine, we have 18 to 21 coccygeal vertebrae. And they are obviously the bones of the tail. So if you feel your horse's dock, those are the coccygeal vertebrae in there, 18 to 21, depending on the size of the horse, a little bit. You'll notice that even in large horses that sometimes the dock feels longer than it does, and other times you might have put the bandage on, the tail bandage on, and thought, oh goodness, this is going on for a long time. May just be that it has a longer dock, perhaps a couple more coccygeal vertebrae in there. So that part of the skeleton, the head, the spine, and the rib cage makes up the horse's axial skeleton. A-X-I-A-L, axial skeleton. We then look at the appendicular skeleton, which makes up the limbs. So like we have appendages, same principle, the horse's appendicular skeleton. And if we start with the front leg, we start with the scapular bone, which is this large bone here, the horse's shoulder. We then have the humerus bone through here. We then have the ulna, which is the horse's elbow, highlighted there. The scapula, humerus, ulna. We then go down to the radius, through here, which is the top of the horse's leg. The radius. We then have the carpus, so carpal bones, and there are 6 carpal bones there. And the pisiform bone at the back here, which also could be known as the accessory carpal bone. So 6 carpal bones and the pisiform, which is the accessory carpal bone. We then have the cannon bone, the main bone of the horse's lower leg below the knee. We have a splint bone either side of the horse's cannon bone. We have the sesamoid bone at the back here. There are 2 of those. We then go on to the long pastern, the short pastern, the pedal bone, which is the main bone of the horse's foot, and at the back of the pedal bone, which actually isn't on the diagram itself, but would be just where my red arrow circle is now, would be the navicular bone. So from the top, scapula, humerus, ulna, radius, carpus, pisiform, cannon bone, splint bones, sesamoid bones, long pastern, short pastern, pedal bone, navicular bone. Some people on that note would know the pedal bone is the coffin bone or the coffin joint. Either is fine. I prefer in an exam to use pedal bone. We then go to the hind leg. So we have the pelvis. And that's made up of 3 parts. You have the ilium, which is the wing of the pelvis. Should be you'd be able to feel the point of the horse's hip. We have the ischium, which is here, which would be the horse's point of buttock. So again, another landmark that you may be able to feel. And then we have the pubis, which isn't able to be seen obviously it's internal to the horse, and that's the part in the middle of the pelvis, which is the joining together part. So ilium through to the ischium, and then the pubis. We then have the femur, which is the large bone here, which goes on to the patella, the horse's stifle, essentially, but the patella bone there. We then have the tibia, which is the main bone of the horse's leg, below the stifle, and the fibula, which in a human you'll know is two separate bones, but in the horse it is actually fused. So the tibia and fibula are one, but the fibula is slightly on top of the tibia. We then have the tarsal bone, so the tarsus there, and the point of hock is called the os calcis. The tarsus, os calcis. From that point onwards, the bones are very similar, or are the same basically as the front leg. So you have the cannon bone, the splint bones, sesamoid bones, long pastern, short pastern, pedal bone, and the vicula at the back there. So just to run through them again from the top, I have the pelvis containing the ilium, ischium, and pubis. We have the femur, patella, the tibia and fibula, the tarsus, os calcis, cannon bone, splint bones, sesamoid bones, long pastern, short pastern, pedal bone, and the vicula. So that is the bones that I would expect to hear from a stage 2 candidate, and obviously a useful revision tool for those of you doing anatomy, maybe at college, or the basis of anatomy at university, and a really good starting point just to, even if you are not in education or working towards anything like that, it's a really good idea to know your horse's skeleton, because if you needed to give the vet some information, for example, you'd be able to use the cannon bone or the scapula or cranium, etc., as part of your anatomy terminology, as that kind of library of terminology grows in your mind. So I'm just going to run through it from the start now, straight through without pausing. And obviously, if you are using this video to revise, etc., do pause whenever you want to, just to make some notes yourself, write down some names and so on. So we have the incisors, premolars, molars, mandible, maxilla, cranium, orbit, occipital, atlas, axis, 7 cervical vertebrae, 18 thoracic vertebrae, 18 ribs, 10 true, 8 false, the sternum, lumbar vertebrae, sacral vertebrae, coccygeal vertebrae, the axal skeleton. Moving to the appendicular skeleton, the scapula, humerus, ulna, radius, carpus, pisiform, cannon bone, 2 splint bones, 2 sesamoid bones, long pastern, short pastern, pedal bone, and the vicula bone. Pelvis containing the ilium, the ischium, the pubis, the femur, the patella, the tibia, the fibula, the tarsus, os calcis, cannon bone, 2 splint bones, 2 sesamoid bones, long pastern, short pastern, pedal bone, and the vicula. So there we have it. That's the horse's basic skeleton that we've gone through today. Do skip forward, do pause whenever you want, do make notes, and hopefully that helps you to learn all those anatomy features. Hopefully this video was useful for you. If it was, please do hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for future videos, all on the horse's anatomy, plus much more to come. Thanks everybody, and see you in the next video.